Last time on Players Cup 3, I started out 1-0, but then lost in a 6-mon mirror match to Audi. The loss set me back quite a bit. It meant that I'd have to play around 13 rounds of Pokemon. So here we are, video number 2. Being down 0-1 really sucks because it means at any point if I lose, the video ends, the run ends, and I can't make it into the Players Club Global Finals. Will we prevail? Let's find out now. So I've played this matchup 1,000 times. This matchup always tends to go in my favor, but if my opponent plays really well, they can navigate through it. I opt to lead with Grimmsnarl in P2, with Groudon and Venusaur in the back. Now, my team looks really good versus Ferrothorn, but Ferrothorn is actually the win con here, and that's the most important Pokemon we're going to have to deal with. Groudon, while being really great against Rain, is also really bad at the same time. And Charizard and Incineroar are just no-goes. So, like, I have to rely on Weather Ball from Venusaur to beat the Ferrothorn here. So it's a giant Weather War, and it's all about dancing around this Ferrothorn. So my lead is, like, godlike, except for if they lead Kyogre, but my opponent didn't. So I'm kind of just chilling here. My opponent does get a really good turn 1, though. They Parting Shot, get an Ogre, and get in Ferrothorn, the two biggest threats to me. So my opponent plays this incredibly well, and I get up a Reflect, which actually does nothing for the next, like, 3 turns, because I'm not going to get hit by moves. So it's not the greatest turn for me, but it's not, like, obviously not over. I think my opponent is in the best spot they could be in, though. So I have to switch to Venusaur, and Venusaur's HP is so important. It's, like, literally the only resource this game that I care about, as long as the Venusaur's HP is good and the sun is up. So switching into this Water Spout sucks because I take half health behind a light screen, which is so dumb. Kyogre is so good, but the situation is not that bad. I'm threatening Ferrothorn with Weather Ball, but I also know that Kyogre can't just sit in because I'm threatening Vine Lash. So I go for this sick, nasty, spicy Max Geyser into Incin. I was really proud of this play because I think it covers almost all options. There's no way they leave Kyogre in, and there's no way Ferrothorn doesn't protect here, fearing a potential Weather Ball. So I'm feeling so good about this turn. Like, I was smiling ear to ear when I did this. Max Geyser is so sick, Weather Ball is such a cool move. So we body Incin pretty hard here. This is just a free big chunk onto Incin. We slap him with a little wind-up Spirit Break. Do not get the KO though, which kind of sucks, but there is no berry on the Incin, so this damage is permanent. So I opt to switch out Grimmsnarl here. It's done its job. The Leech Seed dodge was nice, but obviously I'm switching out. It's not a huge deal. I need to just basically conserve Grimmsnarl and get P2 in here, just so I can potentially use it in the future for Scary Face speed control, or just as a switch in. So, yeah. So I take out Incin here with Vine Lash, which is actually pretty godlike. And my opponent has yet to switch out Ferrothorn. Like, my opponent plays with Barbs of Steel here, just not afraid of the Ferrothorn and not afraid of my Weather Ball. So they bring in Dragapult, which is a little scary because, again, like, I can't lose Venusaur, otherwise I automatically lose the game. So I have to go for Max Guard here to defensively just waste a turn of their max. That's really all I'm trying to accomplish here. I'm not doing much outside of that. And then I'm getting this big juicy Ice Beam. Download is so good. I actually get a freeze here, which is quite incredible. Body Press comes through, but I have Reflect, so we're kind of chilling. But the situation is still pretty scary, but the freeze is a lifesaver. A lifesaver. So right here, I decide to finally get the courage and press the Weather Ball button onto Ferrothorn. I'm finally like, you know what, Porygon, let's do it. My only fear here is if they switch into Kyogre, but they do not. So I just kind of like read my opponent here in a way, just because like I was pretty confident they weren't switching into Kyogre because they haven't done it in the past, and it's like they didn't read the team sheet or something. Like I think it was that they were just playing really confident that I wasn't going to actually Weather Ball, which I totally respect. But then at this point, like, the freeze is just kind of clutch. Like, I think the game would have been much harder, and I would have had to navigate much more carefully around the Weather Ball. That I think, honestly, my opponent just got kind of desperate, and I think I got a little lucky with this freeze. Like, I think my opponent played it really well. He was a really nice guy. Like, this was my favorite opponent of the entire tournament. This guy was just so nice, and just playing him was just a great pleasure, and, like, his messages were so kind. Like, this dude, MVP of the tour. This is my favorite opponent. Just such a really nice guy. GG's to Mound. But at this point, yeah, he got frozen. Like, I think I just win. Like, I don't have to think very hard here to navigate around this one. It's just one of those games that it's Pokemon, and like I think like maybe had he not got frozen, like we would have had a real competitive set on our hands. But you know, he got frozen. What can you do? And it's one of those games that feels really good because I hexed them out, which means that their mental is a little bit weaker than mine because I'm feeling confident. Actually, this guy, like when I messaged him, he seemed really confident and just like he just didn't let it get to him. So like I don't know if his mental was actually really shaken here. I think he was just really confident in his play regardless. But sometimes, you know, like if you do hack someone out, it's actually just a benefit because then they're just playing tilted and you just got a free win. So it's a win-win. But at this point, it's just really slow paced, like just trying to lock the game up as best I can. This matchup should look good on paper, and this is a team that everyone should have prepared for in the tournament. But the matchup is still really scary, even though I've practiced against this several times. Raghav and Kimo have ran the sets. We've watched the replays so many times. But this matchup can still get scary just because of how good Ferrothorn and Kyogre are together. So I take game 1 there, feeling pretty good about myself. So now, going into game 2, there's not much I can really fully do to adjust. A lot of the tools are really important, but at the end of the day, I can't really change my Pokemon. This time around, I opt to lead with Venusaur though, just in case they do lead with Kyogre. In game 1, they very rarely would lead with Kyogre, that's why Grimmsnarl P2 was a safe lead. But in game 2, I have to respect Kyogre a lot more, and I would kind of auto-lose if they did lead Kyogre. So I lead with Venusaur. And turn 1, this is the stuff dreams are made of here. This is heat. So they opt to max Dragapult, which feels pretty good because this is my anti-Dragapult lead. So now my plan is just to, you know, bunker down and just survive the max turns while gaining momentum. So I'm getting Reflex up, maybe a Trick Room, maybe a Light Screen, whatever I really need. But turn 1, they Phantasm P2, which is just like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing that could have happened. That turn was just so good. And at this point, I'm feeling really confident here. Porygon does get, you know, the Wormwind, but that's not a huge deal. And they do go for Taunt, but I, being the player that I am, predicted this. And I went for a good old double tap onto Dragapult here. And this Porygon, for some reason, is just crazy today. It froze in the first game, and now it gets a crit. Porygon's just popping off. So now I take the Wormwind, which does kind of suck because I have no recover right now, like, because I'm taunted. So it is a little bit scary. And they go for Parting Shot. So, like, Kyogre can come in freely here. I don't have recover. Like, the situation isn't the greatest, but I still do have Venusaur and Groudon in the back, and their max is about to end. So there's that. The Spirit Break was to cover for a potential Kyogre switch in as well, because at this point I'm sure Porygon can get the KO, and I want to make sure that Kyogre doesn't come in scot-free. But Dragapult does live, but then gets frozen. Oh my god. This Porygon, I should have bought a lottery ticket this day, to be honest. This Porygon is going nuts. Freeze, crit, freeze. Just a true MVP. So my opponent actually opts to save Dragapult, which may seem like a little bit of a weird play, but I think it was a good play just because you can sack it later, and Incin is really, really free to switch in here. So I think it's actually a good play, even though the Dragapult is just getting screwed by hacks. So again, I'm just putting pressure on the slot that's not Ferrothorn because I really don't want to see Kyogre. I don't want to see Kyogre come in for free without a Spirit Break of some sort. But now the situation's looking pretty good. They have a 2 HP Dragapult in the back. I've got a big Venusaur, and I'm ready to rock. So we're ready to go here. So Ferrothorn goes for Protect, but once again, I kind of got this vibe that my opponent was never going to let me get off the Weather Ball. Especially after that game 1, he just played the Ferrothorn really, really aggressively, so I decided not to try and punish the Ferrothorn. It's also not really threatening me at the moment, so like I can always pick it up later with a Weather Ball. So I decided to go for some good max Quake damage into Incineroar, and they decide to sack Dragapult, which I think is a really good play because now they can navigate back into Incin or Kyogre for free. So I think the Dragapult switch, it sucks that I froze it and ultimately like it never tried to move, so it didn't really get unlucky, but like I think I did get lucky with the freeze because it made my opponent play a certain way. So I think this set was a really good one, but I just got kind of lucky, and you know, we take those, but it does help when you get a little lucky, you know, it helps. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good because I just have to kill this Ferrothorn eventually, but I call this switch into Kyogre and just slap it with this Big Daddy Vine Lash. So at this point, like, it's pretty doomed. Like, their max is done. I've got Vines up. Kyogre's at -1.5 HP. Like, Ferrothorn may be getting these body presses off, but I've already won the game with the weather control. I'm feeling very confident and feeling very good here. I think my opponent did play as well as they could, but ultimately I did get a little lucky, and it just put way too much pressure on their max specifically. I was following the right flowcharts and the right lines, and I think the games would have been a lot closer, but unfortunately they just kind of seem one-sided, and they just seem very much, I feel in control the whole time, because the little hacks I'm getting is putting me very, very ahead. That's one of the scariest parts, I think. Like, you know, like when a good player gets hacks, like it can be almost impossible to fight against that. Like even that's happened to me before. I've gotten played against good players and they'll get a crit turn 1 and there's like, yeah, this guy's really, really good, he's not going to let me come back into the game. Whereas sometimes it feels like you can make comebacks just because the players aren't playing as well as they could. But in this case, you know, like I'm punishing any chance of luck I get. I'm going to push it all the way forward, and I'm going to do my best to take the win. So that's kind of what's happening here. Obviously the max Quake and Precipice Blaze, or my Vine Lash Precipice Blaze was extremely safe there. Or I think I went for Max Strike. It was a really safe play, and now at this point I just need to navigate back into a position where sun's up so I can press the Weather Ball button. So I try to hit a Sleep Powder on the Kyogre just because it's the best move. I don't really want to lower my special attack at this point because there's no need. Because I do have to like remain as powerful as possible just so I can hit it as hard as I can with the Weather Ball. So I do switch out Venusaur here because I'm at -1. And at this point I know Ice Beam plus the Vines will kill Kyogre. So that's the play that I go for. Kyogre is knocked down to 1 HP. I'm playing to those Vines. Body Press on the Groudon isn't a big deal because all I need to do is get Venusaur in, and then I win with Weather Ball. This matchup is really, really scary. Like, I made it look easy, but oh my gosh. Like, this matchup's really scary, and I think if my opponent didn't get really unlucky, like, oh man, he would have made me work for it. But ultimately, I bring in the Venusaur, and I'm about to rain down this Weather Ball onto my opponent to secure the dub. At this point, they need like a 4x protect, but I will always have Groudon in the back, so no matter what they do, it is futile. The Weather Ball will rain down onto Ferrothorn. It's really funny and ironic that the team with Charizard and Incineroar Groudon and Weather Ball Venusaur is weak to Ferrothorn, but it really is. If the opponent plays a Ferrothorn like amazingly well, it's very, very difficult to get by. But GG's to Mound. It was a great game. So after beating Mound, I felt really, really good, and I was really happy to have pulled out that dub because that was a matchup I'd practiced and I was ready to go. Seeing my next opponent's team, it was really, really scary because it was a little bit unorthodox and it was a team that I actually hadn't practiced a lot against. The Lapdog strategy had sort of died down, so I was a little bit afraid here. So let's hop right into team preview. So seeing my opponent's team, I was really scared. Lapras, Zacian, Incineroar, Zapdos, Amoonguss, and Moltres are really, really scary. And it just seems like a really good overall team. Also, Zapdos just gives me endless issues. So anytime I have to play against Zapdos, I have to be playing as well as I can. So in game 1, I decided to lead with a very defensive open of Grimmsnarl and Incineroar with Groudon and Charizard in the back. Normally I don't lead this, but it looks so good into Zacian, so good into Lapras, and good into Zapdos as well, just to immediately start applying parting shots. I also assumed that my opponent would not be bringing Lapras in game 1, just because I don't think it's very good versus the Sun, versus Venusaur. Even Groudon can do pretty well against it. So I made the safe guess that my opponent would not bring Lapras, and they don't. So this is like, think of Feeny plus Incineroar in 2019, where you just set up light screens and just start instantly U-turning to get into a better position. And that's basically what this lead was. So I just instantly, you know, parting shot the Zapdos, just weaken it as much as possible so I can potentially start setting up Swords Dances, start just damaging for free and making the max Zapdos less appealing, because that's the thing I'm afraid of most here. And Light Screen is, you know, obviously a very free turn for Light Screen here. So my opponent actually did bring Lapras, and, you know, I was a little shocked. I really didn't see the Lapras coming. And I knew immediately that I was going to have to make some adjustments to try and navigate myself into a good position. So right here, I make a pretty hard read that they're going to target down Groudon with an ice move, and that switching into Incin is relatively free. This is a pretty risky move. Like, they're going to go for the Resonance, and I just tried to call him here as best as I could. Because this matchup's really scary as is, especially on elimination point. Like, if I lose 2 games, I'm done. Zapdos is a Solvest as well, so Volt Switch is kind of annoying here, and they do get to reset their weaknesses. Or their parting shots, sorry. And then they switch in Zacian for free, get the attack boost, but they do hit me with the Resonance, which is pretty awesome because that's what I wanted. So this next turn, I decided to make a risky play. For those who don't know, my Incineroar is the speediest Incineroar in the West, designed to outspeed Zacian after Scary Face. So, to accomplish said goal, I decide to Scary Face and Flare Blitz. Now this play is kind of crazy normally, but I knew it would catch my opponent off guard, and I was hoping that I would do enough damage so that they wouldn't be able to sub. But fortunately for me, it burns. They actually do have enough HP to sub, but this means that they're about to go down to the burn. This was the coolest moment for Incin the entire tournament. This was such a cool tech to have on the team, and I'm really glad I got to pull it off here. This shit was sick. So Zacian goes for sub and dies to burn. Obviously, the burn is really nice because I'm just able to KO their Zacian without it doing any damage. But now I'm in a pretty decent spot because I have Charizard, Groudon, and Grimmsnarl versus 2 special attackers and an Incineroar. So potentially just stacking Max Waves with Groudon, putting on the Wildfire, putting out those light screens and Spirit Break should mean victory for yours truly. So I decided to max Charizard because I want the Wildfire, and I think Groudon doesn't need to max to win this to win versus this team. So I just go for some Airstreams to potentially guarantee the outspeed versus Zapdos later because my opponent has no speed control. It will be all but guaranteed. And also to speed up Grimmsnarl so I can do this before Lapras gets to even move. So this turn was just really good for me. I weaken Lapras, I speed up Grimmsnarl, and I make sure I'm faster than Zapdos for the rest of the game. Win, 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 baby. So Max Geyser comes through. This is their last turn of Max, but Charizard with that nice vest tanks this like an absolute champion. Just shrugging off that damage. So now at this point I want that sun back because the sun will be, you know, for 5 turns. It's more of a permanent affair now. So I decided to switch in Groudon and try to do as much damage as possible to this Lapras. But unfortunately for me, I want to get rid of Lapras because Lapras is the only thing that beats Groudon. Like Zapdos and Incineroar can like, I can shrug that damage off. But Lapras is a problem. So I go for Wildfire, but unfortunately it switches to Incin. But that also isn't a huge deal because now they're surrounded by fire, which means Zapdos has a timer on its hands, especially with my good friend Groudon here. Zapdos goes for Thunderbolt once again. That vest, just tanking it up. God damn, I love Vest Charizard. It's so good. So I have to conserve Groudon because once again, it's my win con here. So keeping it as healthy as possible is my plan. So I decided to switch it out immediately just because I don't want it to die. And then Charizard, you know, goes down, but it's not a huge deal. I'm still feeling pretty well about this game just because Groudon is looking really good versus everything, and I have a Grimmsnarl with potential speed control and potential just Spirit Break pressure the entire time. So I'm still feeling pretty good here, outside of a potential burn from Zapdos. But I hit my P-Blades, Incin goes down, and now it's Zapdos and Lapras versus the world with a Spirit Breaking Grimmsnarl and a Groudon in the sun. So I'm feeling really, really good. Zapdos dies to the good old Wildfire. And at this point, you know, it's all but one. I felt pretty good about that game. I kind of cheesed the Zacian, which felt really good. But this matchup is still really, really scary. Like, I kind of barely won here. Like, if Lapras got a crit or something went a little bit wrong, like, maybe this game could have went into my opponent's favor. So this matchup is clearly very, very tight. And I would have to be playing as well as I could. I also think my opponent was playing pretty well. Like, bringing the Lapras was a little risky, but it paid off for them a little bit because of what I brought. I didn't actually bring Venusaur. So the Lapras was probably the best it could have been, but unfortunately when you just stall at that max and you have the world's tankiest Charizard, it's pretty easy to beat the Lapras. So I felt good about that game 1. I was a little nervous, but like, you know, I was still feeling myself. I was still feeling confident. So this time around, they brought Lapras. So I was a little bit afraid of the Lapras this time. So I definitely wanted to bring potentially Venusaur or my Eerie Impulse Porygon 2 to help combat that in a more consistent way. I did manage to get by last time, but that wasn't always a guarantee. So I decided to opt for P2 Incineroar. Once again, Incineroar is pretty godlike in Zacian, and also it's just really, really useful. And then I bring Groudon and Venusaur in the back, just putting tons of pressure onto the Lapras, and then also just like Eerie Impulse pressure is just good versus the entire team. I also noticed they didn't bring Amoonguss, so I felt good about that. So my opponent leads off with Fire Cat and Moltres into my Fire Cat in Porygon 2. Now this situation is a little scary because Moltres can do a lot of things, but what I do know is that my Incineroar outspeeds their Incineroar. So I felt pretty safe going for Fake Out. I did not want to give a free Nasty Plot. That's a no-go. Like, I don't want to let that happen. So I just go for the Eerie Impulse Fake Out. It's a really, really good turn, and I was feeling really good about myself here. They do have Snarl, which is really weird, but they do whip out the Snarl on me here, which is a little bit unfortunate considering what I'm about to do. I remember this game vividly because I was just so angry at myself. for my play right here. So they go for parting shot onto my Incin. I go for Flare Blitz damage just to get damage on this Moltres, because Moltres can be kind of scary in its own right because I have, you know, a Groudon and a Venusaur in the back. So I wanted to deal with it as soon as possible, but I don't know what I was thinking here. I should have just kept Eerie Impulsing, but instead I proc the Weakness Policy, and I proc Berserk in one fell swoop, meaning Moltres is now at +1 special attack. So now they just feel free to max Moltres because that's just legitimately a very good play. And now my Porygon is completely threatened by both these Pokemon on the field. I felt so bad about this play, and I was just so mad at myself because I was like, what if I just Eerie Impulse? Like, the game was so won. All I'd have to do is parting shot, play the Groudon Venusaur, and I would have just won the game. Like, the Moltres would have been worthless. But instead, I just let them KO my Porygon because of that boost. So, like, this game, I was really mad at myself. And I kept thinking about this turn because, like, I'm such an idiot. Like, I just threw the game on turn 2. Like, this game was so winnable. The game is still winnable at this point. You know, as long as I don't miss a sleep powder or something. But, you know, I missed. So, the game's kind of over. I wasn't really mad about the sleep powder miss at all. I didn't even think about it. I was just mad at myself, honestly. Like, I was really frustrated myself for that play. Now they just grab Venusaur, which at this point, like, had I put that thing to sleep, it would have been a really good turn for me because I did target, they did target Groudon, so Venusaur was always living the turn. I would have gotten SD off, I could have navigated into Incineroar. It could have been a good situation had I hit the sleep powder, but alas, it was not meant to be. So at this point, it's just a slow death of Incineroar and Groudon. There's nothing they can really do. Like, Moltres is too big at this point. Zacian's just going to come in unintimidated in the late game, and I'll probably lose the game. So, this is one of those games that, like, especially at this point in the tour, like, I can't be throwing these kind of games because, you know, this is my tournament life's on the line, and if I mess this up, I'm done for. I won't be able to, I'll be out of the tour. So, I was really frustrated with myself, and I knew I had to turn it up. I knew I had to go crazy stupid hard if I wanted to have a chance to come back in this tour and to potentially make it to the finals, which is always the goal, right? So I try to max Groudon. I get this nice max Quake off into Incineroar and grabbing a KO, so it's not a 4-0. I did good. And then Incin tries to get the Flare Blitz kill onto Moltres. And you know, Incin goes a little nutty. Incin goes a little nutty and gets a nice little critical hit. But at this point, like, Zacian's just too strong. Groudon took too much damage, and it's all for naught. Like, I'm burning my luck. But, you know, it is what it is. I do actually almost come back here as well. Like, my opponent does kind of throw by going for Substitute, because it does mean that if Flare Blitz KO'd Zacian here, I would win the game. But unfortunately, Incineroar is intimidated, and he just is not strong enough. If I killed Zacian here, Groudon would have won the game with these max Quake boosts, like 100%. But alas, Incineroar is just a tad bit too weak here. It doesn't pick up the KO, meaning we're forced to go to a game 3 because Zacian can just, you know, kill Groudon here. Like, if Zacian goes down, man, I felt confident there. But Zacian picks up Groudon here. Groudon goes down, and we're going into game 3, baby. So this is my first game 3 of the day, if I remember correctly. This is the first time I've lost outside of losing to Audi. So I was a little mad at myself because, again, I think that Ice Beam play was bad. But I needed to remain vigilant and confident in my own play. That's always important. Like, whenever you go down, you gotta play to your strengths and play as well as you can. So I decided to follow my game 1 plan. I thought it was fine. Lapras wasn't proving to be as much of a problem as I thought, and I know if I play my Charizard correctly and well, Charizard can just sweep this team. Zapdos is really their only answer, Lapras to an extent, but like with my Vest, I don't worry about that. My opponent follows the same lead as game 2, and I just change it up back to that game 1 lead. So Mr. Grimmsnarl's here, Charizard's here, we're having a good time, and let's see what we can do. So I switch into Groudon, turn 1. I want that Sun Up, I want the full powered action of Solar Power Charizard, and I whip out that Dynamax animation. We make Charizard huge as shit, and we're ready to go. At this point, I wanted to put a lot of pressure onto Moltres just so that it wasn't doing, like, getting free setup on me. So I wanted to maintain speed control and make my Pokemon fast, so we go for Airstream. We speed up off of Incin. Also, killing Incin is really important. Like, Incin's a really annoying mon to deal with. And so I decided to speed myself up, and Moltres goes for Snarl. So that's not a huge deal because I did get a speed boost onto Groudon, and Groudon did not get Parting Shot. So Groudon is completely and fully strong. Charizard's at -2, which sucks. But at the end of the day, all Charizard really needs to do is press Wildfire. That's really it. So I swap back into Zacian because I don't want to take like a Geyser or a Freeze Dry. So my best chance of taking those is to switch into Grimmsnarl. And so I do that, and then I get ready to smack Moltres with this Wildfire, because at this point we don't think Moltres is going to max. Like, why would it, right? Lapras is way better. So, you know, I make that educated decision and go for the Wildfire onto it. It doesn't even do half, so like it wasn't even a big deal. And Grimmsnarl takes both these hits just fine. So this does mean I have the ability to set up Light Screen or Reflect, whatever I really want, or Scary Face if I really needed to. But, you know, set up Light Screen here so these special attackers aren't swamping me down. This is a fun interaction as well. Since Wildfire lowered Moltres to half, I don't actually proc Berserk. So I'll never proc that for the rest of the game unless it finds some way to heal itself. But it can't do that. So I go for Wildfire here on the Moltres. It's still alive, but it doesn't matter at this point. Like, Wildfire's cooking. We have the Light Screen. And Charizard's just wasting Lapras' max moves. That's the most important part here. Like, Max Geyser into the vested Charizard was going to do nothing. So they pick up the KO into Grimmsnarl. But we're just wasting time. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about this situation because, you know, Moltres is KO'd. Lapras is slowly burning down, which means eventually it'll be in range to just bring in Groudon on it. So the situation is not bad. It's not a bad situation. This next turn is rough, though, because I do have to bring in either Incineroar or Groudon. I have to bring in Incineroar because I don't want Groudon to take a water move or an ice move from a max Lapras. So Incineroar is kind of the only option here. And then I just have to stall out one more turn of max so I can set up my Sun. That's all I need to do. And then Groudon can beat Lapras, Incineroar, and Zacian. I know he can do it. So I opt to switch in Groudon in that slot. Just because I need Groudon to come in so I don't lose a Pokemon here. And I go for Parting Shot into Lapras. And I'm going to make... My plan here is... It's really obvious that Groudon would come in for Incineroar was, or Incineroar would stay in. So the Max Geyser is always safe there. So I opt to do it this way. And they go for Darkest Lariat. And they go for the Max Geyser into Charizard. But he's got that vest, baby. Charizard tanks the hit like a god. So we take the Max Geyser in the Sun with the Parting Shot just so well. So at this point now, I can reposition back into Incineroar and potentially get up the Sun if I so choose. But I just look for the kill here. I want to kill Lapras. I want to kill Incineroar. At this point, Lapras would faint to a Wildfire, but sadly, it's not meant to be. I missed the P-Blades onto Lapras. We take this Ice Beam. Which is fine, honestly, because, you know, we have the Citrus Berry, the Light Screen's up, kind of chilling. So all I have to do is play around Light Screen and Intimidate, because their only Pokemon they have left in the bag is Zacian. And we know that because it's our legend, they're going to bring Zacian. So all I have to do is play my Incineroar correctly, and we'll be able to beat Zacian. This game is still a little scary, though, because Zacian is obviously, if Zacian were to call one of my plays or get a nice Behemoth Blade off, I could lose the game, which is really, really scary. This turn is really scary. I did not account for Helping Hand. I had no clue because I thought, oh, I'll just press P-Blades and I'll win the game. I did not account for Helping Hand whatsoever. But Groudon, being the champion that he is, takes the Behemoth Blade like a boss. And we just grab the KO on the Lapras, do half to Zacian. And at this point, it's over. All I have to do is stall out, get a potential Flare Blitz off onto the Zacian, and we win the game. That's all I have to do. So I press Fake Out, you know, get the free switch into Charizard. And then I switch Incineroar out because I want to just, you know, get the Sun back up so Zacian doesn't, like, randomly live Flare Blitz. So this is the best option here. And I also want to make sure that Zacian's the one, he's dying to Incineroar so that I'm using a 100% accurate move. So I don't want Groudon to be the one killing it. So I bring Incineroar back in, full HP, in the Sun with Flare Blitz. Easiest dub of my life. This is where we can obviously get the KO, but I had to flex here. I knew he was going to protect, so I decided to go with the Fake Out Swords Dance, baby. Not many people would do it, but I'm not one of those people. We set up the Swords Dance. We're a +2 attack, baby. It's time to party. We press Precipice Blades. We press Flare Blitz. At this point, it's impossible to lose unless Sacred Sword crits Incin, but Incin does not get crit. Groudon connects with the Blades, and it's money. It's money. We win the game. This game was so stressful, and I'm so glad I won, because I really thought I could win game 2, and I just kind of threw it out the window. So I'm really glad that I managed to reposition, navigate back in, lock in, and just play the game that won me in game 1. And I played my Groudon and Incineroar as well as I could, and we were able to beat the Lapras team. I was really happy with that, so that was a good win. Now, my next opponent. At this point in the tournament, I was waiting around, so I decided to see who my opponent played. And my opponent had played Alex Underhill, who was using the same team as me. He also played Rogov, who was also using the same team as me. So my opponent, Ethan, has played my team 2 times already. So that does give me a little bit of an advantage because he's lost to it once, and but it also gives him an advantage because he's played against my team and knows what to do. This team is really scary, honestly. Like, Dialga can be a little scary. It's kind of a weird matchup. So I decided to lead with Grimmsnarl and Charizard, one of my go-to leads. It just looks good all around here with Incineroar and Groudon in the back. Thundurus is really scary, like in general, and this team does not make Thundurus any less scary, especially with Whimsicott. Like, Whimsicott, Rillaboom, Thundurus, Dialga, it's not a fun combo. And also an Entei, which is nightmarish in its own regard. So this matchup was really quite scaring me here. But I thought, my lead can combat Thundurus Whimsicott like pretty well. I can just set up Reflect and take the hits pretty well. I can also just switch into Charizard. Screens were going to be really important throughout the entire match, so I thought Grimmsnarl was perfect. So turn 1, I got to get Charizard out of there. I want him to waste a potential max electric turn into Charizard, just potentially. But my opponent doesn't fall for the bait and max, but they do fall for the bait and go for Wild Charge. So I get this relatively free Reflect, but they didn't use a max turn, which kind of sucks. But the situation is still not horrible for me. It's not horrible. So, I want to set up both screens because Dialga is really important to beat in the late game. And my opponent actually taunts my Groudon. So, I thought this was a free Swords Dance. I thought this was the freest Swords Dance I've ever pressed. But my opponent actually read me pretty hard there. So, that turn felt kind of bad because I didn't actually get my Groudon to +2, which would have just won the game for me. So, now I actually have to, navigate around this sticky situation with like Thundurus, or with Groudon, Charizard, and Incineroar versus the Thundurus, which is actually a really scary, unfun situation. So both the flying types are going to get big here, but obviously we're rooting for the Charizard guy. And my opponent just sets up Tailwind because, speed control. And they go for Max Lightning. They're just trying to do as much damage as possible. They know my team's slow. They know, like, with Tailwind, they'll outspeed me with everything anyways. So they just get the damage off, which is nightmarish. But we take it somewhat well, and we're actually able to KO back with a Wildfire, which is actually kind of good. We kind of traded their max for half of ours, but like I think we ultimately got the better trade out of that because we killed Thundurus, who's a problem. And I do get a free Rock Slide here, and we set up the Wildfire, which is, come on, that's that's pretty lit as well. So the situation is not bad. They bring in Dialga, which is kind of scary here because they're threatening a lot of damage on other Pokemon. So they end up going for Moonblast into Charizard and Ice Beam. Charizard with that vest once again clutches it. I swear, like the best part about this team is Assault Charizard, and changing that is just like throwing. I think that's just the best part. So I actually end up getting a double KO here because Vest Charizard is able to clutch it for me. Their team is just kind of crumbling because it's very hyper offense based, and just getting KOs and surviving is just enough. Sometimes just setting up the screens is enough to win. My opponent brings in Umbreon, but at this point their fate is sealed. I have a full HP Incineroar and a full HP Groudon versus Umbreon here. So all I have to do is hit my moves, and eventually it won't be able to handle my damage even with Recover or Moonlight. So it's not a huge deal. But I think this is one of those times where, like, if you ever break the offensive team, if you live a crucial turn you shouldn't, you live turns that you shouldn't, it's really easy to just KO back with damage. And I think that's what happened here. I was able to survive the big hit, and then I lived 3 attacks with Charizard, and I think that was a little too much for them with the light screen. So it was just a pretty straightforward dub for me, and I was really happy to get that dub because this team is really scary. So this game, I decided to change it up completely and go for Venusaur, Grimmsnarl with Groudon and Incineroar in the bag. I decided to opt to not to bring Charizard, even though Charizard was the MVP last time, just to put a little more sleep powder pressure on, just put pressure on in general. But my opponent leads with the dreaded Rillaboom Thundurus lead. Now this lead was a huge problem, because normally leading with Venusaur is totally fine because I can just survive the max airstream, but not this time because they can just fake out my Grimmsnarl. So I'm not living max airstream without Reflect. So this was awful for me. This was the worst case scenario in a lead. So I'm forced to pivot around, switch into this Groudon to try and take the hit, but now Groudon's being threatened next turn. It's just disaster after disaster here. Grimmsnarl gets faked out, and then my opponent makes the read and hits Grimmsnarl with the airstream. So now I have to play this game without screens. If you know me at all, I love screens, and playing without screens sounds like a nightmare. So now I have to actually play the game. I can't just outstat my opponents with the light screen and reflect. So now I'm playing Pokemon. I'm upset. I'm sad. So I have to switch into Instant here to actually proc the Thundurus's Defiant. So at this point, if Thundurus wakes up, it's doomed. Like, the game is actually unwinnable because they're just gonna hit me with a max airstream. I have no hope. I had to switch an Instant there because I can't like Groudon take a Grassy Glide, but we connect with the Sleep Powder. Oh, sheesh, that's feeling good. Thundurus is fast asleep. I've now navigated myself into an okay position, but at any point if Thundurus wakes up, I'll probably lose the game. So I have to play really, really carefully here. So I'm going to max my Venusaur because I need to start doing damage. I need to put on immediate pressure, and Groudon's not in here, so Venusaur's the max. Venusaur shows off those nice bangs, and we decide to hit Dialga with Max Flare, which, you know, doesn't do a lot. That was obviously targeted at Rillaboom, but, you know, who could have known? So Thundurus actually takes the Flare Blitz here. You know, it doesn't wake up, which is amazing. It doesn't get that first turn wake, which feels so good. Because now the game's actually a game. Otherwise, it would have just been over. So now I go for Max Flare into Thundurus, but Thundurus does go down, which means the biggest threat is finally gone, and I can sleep soundly knowing the Thundurus is gone. I go for the Parting Shot here because at this point I just need to, you know, stall out the Dialga's damage. Just wait, get Groudon in, potentially stall out and intimidate Rillaboom once again to win the game. But Dialga actually goes for Trick Room, which very good play. It kind of, you know, like it's normally not like super good, but obviously with Venusaur, Trick Room works really well. So at this point, they go for the double tap. They go for the Ice Beam into Groudon, and for some reason, this Entei is actually slower than my Groudon, which caught me off guard, but Groudon lives, thankfully, and he doesn't get burned. So at this point, it's a free Precipice Blades. The Party Rockers are indeed in the house tonight. Dialga and Entei both go down. Well, I guess Entei didn't go down yet, but, you know, like, I get the Max Quake off. Entei goes down. No vines were set up in this game. And, you know, Groudon living that hit was really, really clutch. I went for a pretty big read there that they wouldn't target Venusaur with Entei, and it pays off greatly. Obviously, I could have switched to Instant. I could have just protected. So I thought, you know what? At this point, if Groudon gets to move, that's awesome. They're forced to target Groudon, because if Groudon moves, then I just win. So it felt good to hit those P-Blades and to just win the game from there. Now, obviously, I have to wait like a bunch of turns because I don't want to potentially switch in my Incineroar on like a knockoff or onto anything that's annoying. So I don't want to like get crit or anything on Incineroar, so I just have to wait until Incineroar can come in a natural way, which means waiting for one of my Pokemon to faint. So I just sit here pressing wrong side and Weather Ball just because there's nothing else to do. I just need Incineroar to come in just so I can win the game. Because Incineroar's at full HP, so I don't have to worry too much about this situation. Groudon goes down, which is fine by me. It means Incineroar gets to come in faster. I'm firing off these puny Weather Balls, which are doing no damage because there's no weather. My Venusaur can't touch this thing at all. I have nothing. I mean, I don't know. It's Weather Ball or Leaf Storm, but I just need Instant to come in. So I get the Fake Out here because like technically this is the most optimal play, and I still continue Weather Balling. Like it's just, I'm just trying my best here. Venusaur's trying its best. We can't do much. The Fake Out was to get a little bit more HP just in case, you know, I were to get crit by this Earthquake or whatever. Because they do have Earthquake to proc their own Dialga. So they do have a ground move, which is the scary move. That's why I couldn't just switch in Venusaur or in Incineroar. So I go for this Weather Ball. They hit me with this nice Earthquake, but obviously grassy terrain's up. We take that so well, and we Flare Blitz. You know, I gotta play it safe. But ultimately, we were able to take the dub. After beating Ethan, I was really happy because that matchup was incredibly scary. Like, especially during Game 2. There were a couple turns that if they went a little bit not my way, like if I missed a Sleep Powder, I would have lost the game. So, like, Game 2 was really scary. Game 1 felt pretty in control. But overall, I was still really nervous to play Ethan, as he had played my team before. So, now I'm feeling pretty good about my chances. There's 2 rounds left in the day. And if I make it through these 2 rounds, I'll be able to continue on to the next week of play, which is obviously my goal. So my next opponent is Big Slim, who is using a pretty similar team to mine. It's a Sun Team Mirror. So now, when I saw Slim's team in the open team sheet, I felt so confident. I have played against these teams so many times, and I know exactly what to do. So I didn't record the beginning, like the team preview. So this is the team preview from Game 2, but I decided to lead with Charizard, Grimmsnarl, with Groudon, Venusaur, and back. Obviously, that's not what it shows on screen, but that's what I did, and that's what I led. I just wanted to show you the team preview here. So I decided to go with that just because I had learned from playing with Audie, and I know how to play Sunmirrors. I just need to stay true and focus on my fundamentals, which in this case is just playing a fair game of Pokemon and not trying to cheese with Venusaur Charizard. Venusaur Groudon, sorry. So I decided to lead with Charizard plus Grimmsnarl into Charizard Grimmsnarl. I knew this was the result, and I came up with a plan here. My plan is my opponent knows I have Rockfall Charizard. So what that means is I am free to double tap Grimmsnarl because their Charizard doesn't threaten mine with a Rockfall, but I threaten theirs with a Rockfall. So the plan is simple. Press Airstream Spirit Break into Grimmsnarl to try and get the KO on turn 1. So that's my plan. He sets up Light Screen. I don't care. It weakens my Charizard, but it doesn't weaken my Grimmsnarl. So this play, like, he was forced into such a bad situation just because of my Rockfall Charizard, and I was able to capitalize 100% on this turn 1. Grimmsnarl goes down, which means I have permanent speed control the rest of the game, and I have permanent screens. Like, I can set up more screens than he can, which is amazing here. So at this point, he's forced to max Groudon, and his Groudon actually doesn't run Rock Slide either. So my Charizard is just sitting so pretty here. So I just don't even care. I go for the Wildfire on the Umbreon just to like do as much damage as possible. Start up the Wildfire because burning these Pokemon is important. And I just Pure Break Umbreon too. I just haven't even set up a single screen just because I know my opponent doesn't have Rockfall. So like I just don't care. Like he doesn't have Rockfall on Zard or Groudon, so I'm just free to play as aggressive onto the support Pokemon as much as I'd like, which is fine by me. So at this point he goes for Snarl to try and save the game, but it is too late. Groudon has done Charizard has done way too much damage. Groudon's burning up. Umbreon's now fainting to the Wildfire, and there's no Yawns in sight. So now I'm free to just do whatever I want. I'm able to just press Sleep Powder onto Groudon or Charizard at this point. I'm able to Rockfall Charizard or Wildfire Groudon. So I go for the Sleep Powder onto Groudon because why not? I have an Airstream as well, so I know I'll outspeed and KO this Zard. So I just try to set up the game as well as I can to win the game. I do miss Sleep Powder, which is unfortunate, but at this point, again, I'm feeling really confident because he's not really threatening my Zard in any meaningful way. He does kill my Venusaur, so my Venusaur didn't do anything because it missed Sleep Powder, so it just died. But once again, I'm feeling good. Because all I have is my Groudon on the back, and all I have to do is stall out their max and just chill and just press Blades until I win. Because they will take all the Wildfire burns as well. So this game is basically over. The turn 1 was just really, really good for me. And like it's really hard to come back after that just because I was able to just, you know, set up such a good positioning, especially after turn 1. So I get to show off my cool Solar Beam, which is so cool because I totally meant to run that. And yeah, Solar Beam. So I do some damage. I set up a Swords Dance because might as well. I need to do as much damage as possible. He hits me with a Max Quake, but at this point we know I'll have another one just because that was a Max Quake, so I'll be able to easily live Precipice Blades with my Citrus Berry, that is. And also just like I didn't want to try to hit him while he was big, so I just wait till he gets small, so that's why Swords Dance is a little bit better as well. And now I'm free to just keep pressing Solar Beam and press Precipice Blades to try and win the game. This mirror is like really what this team was designed to do really well versus. I told Raghav during the team building process that I thought it was so important to pub stomp the mirror. I thought beating the mirror was the most important thing. So playing this one felt really good because this was the team I really wanted to beat because I knew it was going to be popular. Big Slim's a good player and he chose this team for a reason. So in game 2, I felt really good. So I decide to lead Groudon Venusaur with Incineroar and Charizard in the back. This is a gambit that I came up with to beat Audie, but I decided to fully commit this time and to play the gambit how I came up with it the night before instead of just chickening it out at the last second. So that was the plan. So this lead is really, really scary for the Sun player because there's a lot of options I can do, and if he leads like Grimmsnarl Charizard again, he's forced into an awful 50-50 that only benefits me. If I play correctly. So he decides to do the Grimmsnarl Charizard once again. I think it's his best lead, it makes sense. And I drop these two bad boys onto the field. And so obviously all I have to do is switch Venusaur out and max Rockfall. Because my opponent is forced to attack, forced to max, trying to get a Wildfire onto the Venusaur. But there's nothing he can do here. He maxes the Charizard because he's forced to stop the Venusaur. Sleep Powder is way too scary. So I felt really, really confident in this turn 1 play because I came up with it and I just wanted to commit to it. I think it's a really cool anti-fun tech lead and I'm glad I got to pull it off here. So we maxed the Groudon because I want to actually take the Wildfire. The risk is that they actually, you know, like obviously against Audi, I didn't max my Groudon, which was a huge mistake. So I'm just adapting as the tournament goes on. He actually does read it correctly and Wildfires Groudon, which is a good play because now I actually take damage. But it does mean we're trading maxes here, but my max will still be alive in the next turn, which is amazing for me. So now Rockfall comes through, gets the KO on a Charizard, and I'm feeling good. This is such a good situation for me, and I'm really happy this play planned out for me because it's just a fun lead, and it's really fun to put the Sun player on their back foot with your own Sun team. So obviously my max is still intact and we gained a KO, but they do have Wildfire, I don't. That's a very important thing to note here. But I do have a Safety Goggles Incineroar, and they don't. So Grimmsnarl is going to set up its screens. It's going to be annoying, which is not fun. But it does mean I do get potential free parting shots here. I go for parting shot on the Groudon because at this point the only way that Slim has a chance of winning is to Swords Dance. So parting shot is relatively safe here as I'm able to put pressure on it, break its White Herb, and potentially come back in with future Intimidates. So this play just felt pretty safe overall. And yeah, it just also gives me a free switch, which is very, very nice. I also got a max Quake boost onto Groudon, which is important because it can come up really useful against the Venusaur in the future. If they try to hit me with a Leaf Storm, I'll be able to actually potentially take it if I'm able to get more max Quake boost. So at this point, I know my opponent doesn't have Rock Slide on Groudon. They have Fire Punch. So I'm able to just freely go for this attack with Charizard. Normally, you'd have to be pretty scared. You might have to switch back into Instant. But I don't. I just get to press Heat Wave with Charizard relatively freely here. They go for Fire Punch into Zard, which does a good chunk, but obviously it's resisted. And Charizard's chilling. So he hits him with this good old Heat Wave, grabs the KO on a Grimmsnarl. Groudon's still alive, which is, you know, not the greatest, but it is at 1 HP, so I can pick it off with even a Weather Ball in the future, which is amazing for me. I'm really proud of this game because I did lose to this Audi earlier in a Sun Mirror, and I'm really glad that I was able to take this game and just play to my strengths and just play kind of a standard game and not try to get creative or crazy. And I just played the game as best I could, and I was able to take this win pretty convincingly against a team I figured I should be able to beat going into the tournament. So I was really proud of this, and you know, obviously Slim is a great player, but I think my matchup was just so good, so Slim didn't even really get a chance to play, but GG's nonetheless. So now, this match is the most important match in the tournament for me, up to this point. If I win this match, I get to move on to another week of play, which is amazing, and is what I came here to do. I really want to win this tour, and this was the most important match to me. When I saw the team sheet, I got instantly horrified. I saw the same 6 Pokemon with the same 6 moves. I didn't know that this guy was running this team, but he had gotten the team as well, and he was running the same exact 6 Pokemon as me. I felt really, really bad, and I was like, man, I actually texted my friend Chemo, and I said, dude, I have to play our team again. Like, I don't want to lose to it. I don't want to have my 2 losses be to the same team. And Chemo said, Colin, you're better than this. You can do this. You're a great player. I know you can beat him. Just play your heart out, right? And like, it was so cheesy, it was so dumb, but I took it to heart, and I came to play this time. So obviously, I learned from my games against Audi. This was the same 6 Pokemon. I also had just beaten a variant against Slim, but this guy had the same 6 Pokemon as me, but he had Scorching Sense, Charizard, I had Solar Beam. So I said, you know what, no tricks, no none of that. I'm going to play the greatest game of Pokemon I've ever played. So I lock in Grimmsnarl Charizard, and I decide to take it to him in the most standard way possible. Whew. I was afraid. I was really nervous because, like, you know, obviously I was expecting another Grimmsnarl Charizard, but this time there's no gimmicks. This was just me playing fundamentals here. So turn 1, I decided to do the same play I did to Slim in game 1. I'm going to kill that Grimmsnarl. That's my plan. Because I think Grimmsnarl is the most important mon in the matchup sometimes, and if you actually get the KO on it early, it can actually shake the game, and it can actually give you huge, huge advantages, such as Scary Face control in the late game, and also just potentially more screens than the other person gets. So my opponent sets up Light Screen, and I set up Airstream. I come at the Grimmsnarl as hard and fast, baby. I'm trying to get this thing out of here. It does a little less damage than I would have liked on that Airstream, but I'm not nervous about it yet. I'm not nervous about it. And my opponent goes for Airstream as well, which, you know, that kind of sucks, but, like, you know, we're speed tying, but, like, you know, he got an Airstream too. I was hoping for not an Airstream, maybe a Wildfire or something, maybe into Grim, who knows. But I do get this Spirit Break off, but Grimmsnarl does live this time, which is rather unfortunate, just because, you know, now they get Reflect Up, which is kind of sucks. but like it's kind of okay because I also get my light screen up. So I also have a plan here to KO the Grimmsnarl. So my opponent goes from Max Quake into my Grimmsnarl. It kind of sucks that they won the speed tie because they do take this Max Rockfall a little bit better, but it also means that I do just straight up get the KO onto Grimmsnarl because, you know, the Sand Tick, you can't dodge that. I do a nice little chunk onto the Sylvester Charizard, but you know, my opponent, he's got the vest too. He's got the same team, so this mirror is really, really difficult. Because we have all the same tools, but they have Max Quake, which gives them quite the advantage, especially in a situation like this. This mirror was horrifying. So they bring in Groudon, which is fine by me, because that means I can just Wildfire the Groudon. I Scary Face their Charizard because I do not want them to potentially, you know, Rockfall me and weaken my damage on my Wildfire. And also Scaring Facing Charizard means I'll be faster than it in the future. With my Groudon, if they don't Airstream right now. But if they don't Airstream right now, that would mean that they don't get, they wouldn't get Wildfire up. So I knew it was pretty likely that they would be slower than my Groudon when I got to bring my Groudon in. So this turn was just really, really good for me. I get a nice Wildfire off on a Groudon, I set up my Wildfire, and I basically just lose Grimmsnarl. That's it. So this situation is rather winnable. And I'm also faster with my Groudon. So this game has set me up perfectly. They spent all their max moves on Grimmsnarl. I got to diversify them a little bit, and I was able to get KOs when they weren't. I was also able to get more control in terms of speed. So I go for Heat Wave here. Heat Wave Rock Slide is a really safe play. Just because I'm able to, you know, pick up the KO onto Charizard. And also potentially threaten the KO into Groudon. It was just a really safe play. I didn't have to think here. My positioning is pretty godlike. But unfortunately, Charizard goes down. So now we have Groudon Venusaur versus Groudon Venusaur with Wildfire up. Sun Mirrors are so close. Like, this game is still really close. And I'm forced to make kind of an awkward play here because I can't kill Groudon with Weather Ball. So I'm kind of forced to just press Leaf Storm into Groudon, which kind of sucks because obviously now I'm at -2 special attack, which isn't a good thing. So the Leaf Storm comes through. They go for Weather Ball into my Venusaur, which procs my weakness policy, which at the end of the day is a good thing for me because now I'm strong. So that's good. And since they didn't target my Groudon, I'm able to just go for P-Blades, and I do big damage, which means now they're going to die to another P-Blades or another Rock Slide or another Weather Ball if they don't win the speed tie. Because if I win the speed tie, I just win the game. But sadly, they win the speed tie. So the game, I do have to hit a move here, which does kind of suck. I wasn't sure if Rock Slide plus Wildfire would KO, so I actually decided to go for Blades, but we don't miss those. No fear. You don't, just hit your moves, you know? Just hit your moves. So I actually win game 1. It was extremely close. I'm really happy I was able to win that though, but it wasn't as convincing as I would have liked, but I still won. So I was feeling really good. Now there was one game standing between me and week 2, and all I had to do was secure it. So against Audie actually led Venusaur Charizard versus me, and I thought it was one of the most frustrating things in the world. So, taking a page out of Audie's book, I decided to lead with Venusaur Charizard with Groudon and Incineroar in the back. It's really important to have Incineroar in the back because he's your fire resist and he's your switch in. So, they lead with the same thing, but I lead with Charizard Venusaur. I was just feeling so good because I had learned all this stuff from Audie, and this was just a culmination of my whole tournament. I was using all the things I had learned from losing against Audie, from playing against Slim, from playing against all my opponents, and they're just coming together in this matchup right here. So I'm able to max Charizard. I switch in my Incineroar because my opponent is forced to make this play. They have to go for Scary Face plus Wildfire because if they don't, their Charizard's going to sleep, and I knew that. It's a very hard turn to not punish. So I switch in Incin, they go for Scary Face, they go for Wildfire, and I have 2 fire types on the field. So if you don't mind, we'll keep track of how many Wildfire burns they actually get on me, which is going to be 0 on this turn, just because we have 2 fire types. So I'm stalling their Wildfire. I wasted their Wildfire turn, I wasted a Scary Face, and I fake out and Wildfire their Grimmsnarl. Max Airstream, sorry, their Grimmsnarl for the KO. I'm faster than Venusaur with Charizard now, and I also am still not getting burned by Wildfire. This turn was absolutely godlike for me. They didn't get a single screen. Their Grimmsnarl did nothing the entire game. I will take this Rockfall, which kind of sucks, but it doesn't even do half because we got that vest, baby. We got that vest. So now, if they have Groudon and Venusaur in the back, they literally can't switch either of them in because I get to Wildfire that slot 100% of the time. It either KOs Venusaur or it KOs Groudon because they never got a single screen. At this point, it's checkmate, baby. It's checkmate. My first couple turns were so good that I was able to reposition myself into a way that I simply couldn't lose. and I was really proud of this game. And I just kind of used everything I learned from Audie's match and applied it here, and I was able to win this game. I was very proud of this one. And at this point, you know, all I have to do is press like Parting Shot, Ancient Power. I can kind of do whatever I want. And the game is mine. I can just Ancient Power Darkest Lariat if I want, because I can't kill both my Pokemon. Ancient Power does pick up the KO onto Charizard. And I still have 2 full HP Pokemon in the back that haven't been touched. And one of them is a Venusaur. So all I need to do is do as much damage as possible, and the game's over. So at this point, I still have yet to take a damage from Wildfire, which is just absolutely insane. But Incineroar goes down, but it's too late. The damage has been done. We've navigated ourselves into a winning position. And he's still getting burned by Wildfire, by the way. I still have yet to be touched by it. And Charizard's still alive, so all I have to do is press Solar Beam, press Precipice Blades, and there's nothing my opponent can do. So I lock in the Swords Dance and the Solar Beam, and my opponent forfeits, allowing me to move on to week 2 of play. At this point, I'm in top 16 in North America. After 230 some people, I was able to make it to top 16. I was really proud of this, and it was just a really, really long tournament. And I made it. I made it to the week 2 of play, and I will upload my next matches coming from week 2 of a different mentality. It's been a week. There's a week break in between, so I'll talk about some of my prep, some of what happened in those matches. Hopefully get that as soon as possible. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a fun time making it. I hope you like and subscribe. I don't know, dude. This video was really fun to make. I hope you enjoyed it. Part 3, the final part, will be out very soon. I'm gonna work on it, hopefully as fast as I can. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a good day. And if you made it this far, thank you so much. Like, it means so much to me that you actually watched this much of my video. So thank you very much if you made it this far. I hope you guys have an amazing day. I'll see you next time.